You may have played poker, but playing poker in Texas is a different animal. This is the Texas Poker Podcast with Tyler and Clint.
Hello, this is the Texas Poker Podcast. I'm Tyler, this is Clint.
What's up, y'all?
And we are back with episode 6. Feels like we've been gone forever.
Yeah, because we had an early podcast last week, so this is 10 days for us. We're not pros, so this could be rocky. This could get off the tracks a little bit.
Right, yeah, we had an early one, and this week we have a late one, just because, just two guys with any varying schedules, sometimes it's not consistent.
Life happens, and until I'm getting paid for this podcast, it's going to go by my schedule.
The podcast will have to adjust to your schedule.
Very, very true.
Right, especially when you're making that hour-and-a-half drive up here, so...
Yeah, College Station's a little far from Houston if you don't know the geography in Texas. But so how are you running this week?
Man, I've been on fire this week. I mean, I had my biggest winning session ever 2 days ago, and then yesterday I beat that again.
God almighty. And I mean, you've been playing for quite a while now, so that's pretty amazing to beat it like back to back.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was one of those ones too yesterday where I really didn't want to go play. I kind of wanted just to stay home, and I was kind of like, I really should go play though, just to kind of grind out a few more hours, because putting in a 5-hour week is pretty pitiful whenever you have the option to put in way more hours.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing that you had such a good session with that mindset, because I feel like when I go in with that mindset, it just never works out real well.
Didn't start off great. I mean, I was started off down horribly, and I was sitting there thinking I should have gone home.
Yeah, that's eventually the cards picked up, so that's really good. Because, I mean, when you go in with the mindset of, hey, I don't really want to play today, and then it starts even worse than that, it's easy to kind of go on like a real quick tilt. So,
well, I guess let me start with the first session. So early in the week I had one pretty good winning session. Then I played horribly and lost, because that's the nature of playing horribly. You seem to lose.
It definitely helps things.
Yeah, they will facilitate taking your money if you want to play bad. So they took my money. I mean, I was in and out before. It was about an hour and a half, kind of bad session. So then I came back and I had my biggest winning session, and man, it was like just whatever I needed hit, flop sets, hit flushes, and then like we were saying, not getting hit for a big hand, like not taking a bad beat or, getting sucked out on or paying someone off a big hand.
Yeah, that's whenever I've had the big sessions. I mean, you want to think it's like, oh, well, I made this great hero call, or I made this great bluff. But most of my big sessions, I just hit hands, got paid for them, and avoided spots where I lost big. I mean, it's, you kind of let the cards do your thing and don't fight against it type deal.
That was, like, I would like to say I played well in that session where I had my most recent biggest winning session, the one earlier in the week, but I really didn't do hardly anything. I mean, I just kept getting good hands, and people would have slightly less good hands, and that was basically the story of the whole session. I mean, just time and time again, which, I mean, that'll happen.
I mean, you're counting on it, because, I mean, poker's great, and, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a skill game in the long run, but in the short run, I mean, if you go to a session and you can't hit anything, it's hard to make a profit. I mean, you can be as skillful as you want. You can't skill flopping a boat. I mean, you just have to flop a boat. So,
right, that's something that I find so interesting, that like any given particular session, you can play perfect and still lose, or you can play horribly and still win. But it's still a skill game, and over the long term is when the skill comes in. That's still so interesting to me.
Yeah, well, and we all curse our luck about that, that donkey who chased his gut shot to the river, calling pot-sized bets. But if there's not just enough, because I was listening to this on the radio the other day from a sports gambling show, and you have to have just the right amount of luck and the right amount of skill. Because if the luck is too much, then you just can't make a profit. But if the skill is too much, then all the players that aren't good, I mean, if they never won anything, they're not going to play. I mean, they're not going to come in and just lose every single time. So Texas Hold'em is perfect for just having that right amount of luck and right amount of skill. And PLO is perfect for having all of the luck.
Right. Well, I guess that's spoken like two non-PLO players, but
granted, my understanding of it probably does not help that on any level.
But I guess let me kind of tell you what happened with yesterday's session, the new biggest winning session.
Okay.
So I didn't really want to play. I showed up anyway, and I was like, all right, here we go. So I sit down, I flop top two pair to someone's, top and bottom pair into someone's flop set and lose the first bullet immediately.
Not a good way to start off a session.
Not a good way to start. Then I'm sitting there playing pretty tight, almost playing no hands. And then we're playing 5-handed, and I flop, what was it? I flopped two pair again to someone's flop straight.
Oh, crap.
Yeah, I was like, well, clearly it's not my day, is what I was thinking. I'm sitting here looking at my chip count, and I'm like, I'm down to like maybe $300, and I was like looking at the table, and I told the dealer, I said, even if I won every single chip on this table right now, I still would be down.
The facts are pointing to this not being a great session.
Not at all. And then, it kind of came up because it was a very short stack table. I think it was like two guys who were like brand new maybe and hadn't played before, and they bought in for like 100 each, and then it was a pretty short stack game. So I said, hey man, let's just draw. I should either go home, because doing this isn't doing anyone any favors right now. So they're like, all right, sure, we can draw. So we draw, and one guy actually said, I don't even want to play. You guys can play. So we go to sit down. I couldn't quite find the right table, but they said there were 4 open seats. So I saw someone get up and walk away. So I was like, I'll just go sit there. And they said, whoa, this is the 5-5 game. So I'm like, I guess I'll play. This is just what I need.
Wait, so are you at 3? You're only at 300, and you sat down at 5-5?
I did.
Did you add on?
I did.
Okay, I was about to say, I was like, man, this is gonna be. You're really trying to run this up right here.
No, I sat down, and I didn't know there was a 5-5 game going on. So I would have been on the list beforehand, because playing that 5-handed game wasn't really helping me much. So I just kind of walked onto that. Like, oh, this is the 5-5 game. So I took out some more money. I was like, oh, I'll play this then instead.
I still find it so weird that like Texas has 5-5, 1-3, and no 2-5. It seems like the lack of that middle gap is just so weird to me.
Well, I guess Paramount has the 2-5, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's just, back in before all of this in the underground games, there was no 5-5 I ever remember. It was all 1-3 and then 2-5. I just find it very strange. It seems like such a wide jump.
Yeah, I agree. But I guess it kind of lends to that 1-3 game being so deep to where you can find games that are similar to a 2-5.
I guess so. There's probably not that much difference, but I don't know. It seems like there could be some middle ground. But okay, so you walk over there and you're having a bad session. You don't feel like playing, and then you decide to go ahead and sit at the 5-5 table. So what happens after this, after you add on?
So once I stumble on the wrong table, they greeted me with open arms when they saw me getting beat up at the 1-3 table to come play at the 5-5.
Yeah, I can imagine. He's having trouble at the 1-2. Let's get him over to the. Yeah, I can see that they were very happy to have you at the table, probably, yeah.
Very welcoming. But, so I bought in, and I had pocket 10s, under the gun +1. I raised and got 3-bet, and someone flat called, so I called. I was calling either way, so I called and just flopped a set. I checked it to the 3-better. He bet, so the person, actually, I called. The other person went all in for less. And then on the turn, it was a very kind of bricky card. So then, but I knew I needed to take the betting lead.
Right.
So I checked it over to him. He bet. I raised him about 3x, and then on the river, which was a blank again, he I just went all in. And he called. So
What did he end up having?
didn't show. I think he had like aces or kings though.
Yeah, I like your 3x raise on the turn bet. I mean, that's a size that, I mean, it really makes it tempting to call given the pot odds. It's hard to get away from a hand knowing that you're probably not good. I kind of like the sizing there.
Well, yeah, and then I thought it was gonna be very awkward river, to just try to like lead out or check raise on the river. Seemed very strange. I mean, disaster would be if it checks through because the only straight was like I think it was like a 6-9 or something that he wouldn't have in a 3-bet pot.
Yeah. Well, I think. Yeah, I always like raising there. So I mean, if it checks on the turn, then you just lead out on the river, but you're probably not able to get your whole stack in there, I assume.
If it checks, but I ended up going all in on the river.
Yeah.
How played? Yeah.
Okay. Very very nice. So yeah, it's a good thing he kind of fell into your trap and bet that turn.
And then I had another hand where I had then the game they wanted to play 5, 5, 10, 20.
This is just so far out of your league at this point.
Right, that's yeah, exactly.
I mean, you might as well be sitting down with Daniel Negreanu and Phil Hellmuth and playing 50-100 at this point for one of us.
Right, so I'm there and they said they want to do one orbit, so I was like, sure, we can do one orbit, I guess. So cut to like 2 orbits later when we're still doing it. I'm in the 20 and somebody raises whenever it's I had Queen Jack offsuit. And I was like, well, this isn't the worst. So I was like, I can defend pretty sure it was only 20. But I ended up flopping a gut shot, ace king on the flop. And the guy bet pretty small. And someone else called. And I was like, I mean, an offsuit 10 would be pretty nice. And then I was like, I could probably just get away from this. But we're playing super deep stacked. I drilled the 10, the offsuit 10. And then the flush bricks off on the river. And I think he had top 2 with ace king.
Oh God, nice. Well, I kind of like your call here. I mean, it's not a good thing to trust gut shots, but when people are betting super small and you're very deep, it's also a lot easier to get paid when you hit a gut shot versus something else. So I mean, when you have a huge implied odds and it's a small bet with a call, I don't mind peeling one off there.
Right. So I did, and got paid pretty good. And I ended up actually having my newest biggest winning session yesterday after having my biggest winning session earlier in the week. So that was really cool and definitely didn't seem like the session that I was going to have. My biggest winning session.
I mean, it's amazing to start out that badly and to run it up. Because I remember seeing the text from you. I was playing at another poker room. And I was like, oh God, this is going so bad for him. And I went to bed, didn't hear anything from you, and woke up to like a picture of your mountain of chips. I was like, holy shit. Did you just buy in for $2,000, just take a picture of it and cash out? I was like, God almighty.
Right. All right. And there was way more than that in the picture too.
Yeah.
And man, in that 1-3 game after I get stacked with that 2 pair to that guy's flop set. Man, there's this the guy who stacked me was just talking literally nonstop.
Right.
I put both headphones in and listened to 2 podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And he was trying to talk to me through both headphones.
God, that's annoying.
Well, no, and here's the other thing. Everyone at the table put their headphones in because this guy would not quit talking.
Headphones, I mean, what is it? I think Chasing Poker Greatness, that podcast, they're always ask, headphones or no headphones. And I'm like, I usually don't like to play with headphones, but having them as an option is the best thing ever. Because, I mean, if you got a guy like that at your table, I mean, it turns, just an annoying session to like, okay, well, you don't really give a shit what they're saying. But, I mean, usually they don't try to talk to you through the headphones, so that's really, that's kind of annoying.
I'll do you one better. So he was trying to talk to me through the headphones, and then the dealer was trying to talk to me through the headphones. I was like, guys,
Like on conversationally?
yes. And I was like, can anyone take a hint? I'm not making eye contact and I'm not responding.
You know, it's weird. I had a similar situation this week too. I get in there, like, and I can tell it's a decent game, but you can tell this just drunk guy who's just being annoying as hell. I immediately sit down. I immediately read the situation. Headphones go in, and I hear two people talking about how they wish they had headphones. So I'm putting them in, and I'm like, "Oh God, this is not." But then the guy next to me, who is actually a really cool guy, he starts talking, and I'm like, I don't mind talking to him, but I'm like, I do mind taking the headphones out and having to listen to the bullshit that's going on around at the table because this guy's just crazy. And then the dealer, same thing, just starts talking to me later. But I was like, whatever, I'll put them up and just talk and be sociable. But it's, to me, that, like, you could say like, oh, no headphones, it's bad for the game, it's a social game. Yeah, that's great if it's a good table, but if it's a bad table, you need something.
Well, I mean, and sometimes you don't feel like chatting after you get stacked. I mean,
oh yeah,
especially the person who stacked you talking to you about the hand. Like, I'm trying to think about anything else.
Yeah, it's absolutely. They're just going on about, what you could have done or how it was just bound to happen. But at that point, you don't really care. You want to, I mean, part of not going on tilt is just moving on and playing the next hand when not thinking about it.
Right. Well, and then here's a situation that happened, like with the dealer. So I flopped. I had ace king. I flopped an ace, and then it ended up running out to where a king made a straight. So 4 cards. So I had top pair, but then I ended up with the nut straight.
Okay.
And then I bet and everyone folded. And the dealer just happened to show random 2 cards. Like he showed 10-4 of spades. And it threw the player off who was talking so much. And then he kept trying to talk. And the dealer was trying to talk to me how he shouldn't have done that. Because now it just sent this table off on a tangent of everyone wondering what's going on. And then he kept trying to bring it up about him showing that hand. And I was like, man, I don't care. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I won my $20 pot. We can move. I mean, you can't imagine many callers whenever it's 4 cards to a straight.
Yeah.
I mean-
Well, I don't know. Lately, I've 4 cards to a straight. If I've got a good hand, paying you off. I mean, I was paying off so many people this week. Yeah, that's unfortunate that they were going on and on about, especially like not a big hand.
Yeah, but once that guy busts out, the whole table was like, oh, whew, finally we can take our headphones off. And everyone took their headphones off after he left. The whole table, because they were like, this guy is so annoying.
Yeah, that's... And, I don't want to, like, call people out, because I actually like a friendly, sociable table. But, I mean, was he drunk?
He wasn't drunk, but he was trying to tell people how they should play.
Ooh, that's might be even worse.
Yeah, like he was telling one guy that he had left money on the table on a certain hand and all sorts of stuff. He said, how can you call on this board or something? And then he did the same thing. He called on a super wet board with pocket kings and got stacked for a ton of money.
Oh, I mean, any person who sits there and talks strategy at the table, 95% of the time, they are not good. Because if you're good enough to know that you shouldn't be talking strategy at the table.
Right, absolutely. So
if somebody asks me, I will give them my honest. I mean, because I always want to help to grow the game, and I don't want to just be better than the bad player. I want to be better than, I just want to grow as a poker player. So I'm always going to help other people do the same. So if they ask me, I will give them an honest answer. But I'm never just going to jump in there and be like, hey, you can't do that or whatever.
Yeah, I guess I've had a few times where people asked me, and like sometimes I'll give my honest feedback. I don't know. I tried really hard not to talk strategy at the table. I mean, just talk about anything else. So
Somebody will be sometimes I'll be kind of non-committal. Well, because a lot of hands, it's just they're up in the air. It's not black and white. I mean, it's might be like a 55-45% edge on one call versus another. But I don't know. If somebody asks me, I don't mind giving them what I would do in that certain situation. I I don't feel like that one piece of advice from me is going to turn them from a donkey to a winning player. I mean, maybe I write everything down and it still wouldn't do it. So I don't think any like one hand is gonna really do it. If they ask me, I will give my honest feedback, but I'm never just like berating and telling somebody or whatever what they should be doing and all of that. And, oh, okay, people play with me. I gotta caveat this: if you come at me with how I'm playing, I'm coming back at you though. Like, there's a couple times where they're like, oh, you're raising pre-flop again and all that. And I tell you what, you start saying like that when you're calling me with 3-7 offsuit, then I'm coming back at you on how you should play. So it goes both ways.
Right. Yeah, especially like in your game where you're seeing the same players every time. Kind of makes for a different dynamic, but...
Yeah, it's So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very different dynamic for both of us. Because you play, like, with different players all the time because you have so many poker rooms. My player pool is about the same.
Right.
So, we'll kind of have to see, So, yeah, like I say, I mean, kind of a completely different, process there.
So I guess that's how I was running. How'd you end up doing this week? Because it's been a long time since we recorded. So,
well, it's been a lot of variance since we started recording. So I remember when we first started this podcast, I was on the most vicious downswing I've ever been on, and I was like, I'm not sure I want to do a poker podcast. Not sure I know how to play poker. So maybe we should do anything. And then I went on a gigantic upswing of I had 10 winning sessions in a row. A lot of them very big winning sessions, but it came to an end this week when I donkeyed off probably like 600 or something off one session, which was not going to be a winning session, but I played so badly. I mean, I can't even say it's the cards because I wouldn't have won, but I could have minimized my losses. I need to go back over like absolute versus relative hand strength. Because I've been getting 2-pair in situations where it doesn't really matter with, like, I mean, one, I had king-queen. I raise almost the entire table calls, and it comes queen 4-4. I bet thinking that it's, someone doesn't always have to have trips here. There's 2 callers. I know the minute there's 2 callers, I'm in trouble. A king comes on the turn, which does not, I know in my head, does not change anything. I mean, nobody has ace-queen here. So any queen I was already beating. And king-queen, outside of giving me boat outs, 8% of the time, doesn't really change much. I check it, and someone bets, and there's a call. And this should be a fold 100% of the time. I level myself into, like, calling. And then he bets the river on a river that ceases to matter, and the pot odds were so insane, and one player hadn't raised, so I didn't think he had a 4, and the other player, I've seen him do erratic stuff, but I know this is a fold too, and I call, and that was kind of the story of my week. I had another one where I flopped 2-pair, but it runs to a 4-card straight, and I'm like, can he use this as a bluff? And I know players at our level are really not turning things into a bluff like that very often. Again, I kind of just sit there and talk myself into a bad call. So like I say, I need to learn to kind of get away from these hands where my absolute strength might be strong, but the relative strength just isn't that great.
Yeah, I mean, that was my story in that I had a pretty big losing session this week earlier in the week where I had overvalued ace queen again. After last week I said don't put all the money with ace queen. You know what I did? Got all the money with ace queen. You know what I did? Went home early. I mean, which is the story of ace queen, getting all the money with ace queen. You're probably going to be in the parking lot pretty quick. So
was it all in pre-flop or after the flop?
Of course it's all pre-flop. Yeah, just a disaster really. Yeah.
I'm usually on the other side. I play ace queen so damn aggressively, but I guess there is a certain point. I mean, I'm not like doing 4-bets and stuff with it. So, I mean, I love, it's been super profitable since I started 3-betting it.
I bet you that not just 3-betting that hand, I bet you just 3-betting more in general makes you more profitable.
I agree with that.
That you 3-betting ace queen isn't what's making you more profitable. I bet if you 3-bet just more in general, you'd be more profitable. But
yeah, that's a very good point.
because everyone always talks about how you're supposed to be 3-betting more when you're in position and stuff, but then it can be tough when you have marginal holdings. And then if you make that 3-bet with marginal holdings and get 2 callers, and if you're buying in for 100 big blinds, oftentimes you're playing for stacks with marginal holdings.
Well, yeah, I think it depends on the table, because, so, I mean, forever and a day, I've said that I don't do a lot of bluffing at our level, because people don't make big folds. I think just getting value from your hands. Pre-flop, I think it's very dependent on how often, I would really need to chart it to see how often you're going to take it down with a 3-bet.
A 3-bet in Texas, probably not getting any folds. I mean, I've made it 100 at 1-2 pre-flop and gotten action, so.
That's kind of where I don't 3-bet too often. But I will say, like, holdings like ace queen and stuff, where you're either going to flop, usually top pair, or overcards. Because there's not a lot of 3-betting in the games I play. Usually people will give you credit for aces, kings, and queens, especially when you're kind of a tight player like I am and you are, depending on the session. So it's because a lot of times, more often than not, when I miss, my C-bet will take it down with ace queen. So it's and then I have the backup for probably about 25% of the time going to hit top pair.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree, but I just 3-betting in certain games, if you're still going to get action whenever you only have aces, kings, ace, king, queens, or jacks, if you're 3-betting jacks, there's almost no reason to 3-bet light if you're always going to get action anyway.
That's kind of my thought. It's if nobody's folding, because in a tougher game you have to 3-bet more often, so that every time you 3-bet you just don't have the nuts. But like you say, if you're going to get action anyways, then you might as well just bet your hand strength.
Yeah, but I mean, still good lesson learned. Don't put all the money with ace queen.
Good job. Yeah, well,
good job. I mean, that's what I did and lost.
Well, I mean, you learned the lesson. My lesson would be, if 2 pairs not great for that board, quit getting all your money in with 2 pair.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if learning the lesson, because I preached the lesson episode 5 and came back with episode 6 confirming the lesson that I just went and did it. So I'm not. I mean.
Well, some of us take a little bit more education and training than others.
Yeah, I have to learn the hard way a bunch of times. So,
yeah, it's it's a lot of drama where I'm at, like over there, like So I've told you forever and a day, like I'm so envious because you live in Houston. You have all these great poker rooms at your fingertips. So it went like I'm over in College Station where there's only one room. It opens at 7:30 Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Considering I work Saturday, that's not a lot of time. Then there's a second room that opens finally, and they're going to be all day, and they're only closed on Sundays. Well, then now the original room has new owners. One of the players and one of the dealers bought it out. So now they're making a push to have earlier games, more games, and stuff like that. So all kinds of drama coming where I'm at, which I love. I'm like, they're like, oh, I can't went over there, and they're like, you're back. I'm like, oh, I'm going to both poker rooms. I'm like, I love the competition, so both are getting my business. So I'm loving this little. I mean, College Station's kind of this growing poker community, so I'm loving that. It's kind of come up a little bit.
Well, and especially 2 rooms in College Station, you're definitely going to want to support both because you want the game in general to grow in College Station. It does you no good if one room takes out the other, and then you only have one room. If both rooms can thrive together, there you go.
Well, that was the owner's like ask. He's like, we're gonna take that, and that room's gonna fold. I'm like, you're looking at it the wrong way. The big thing is to grow the player pool in general, and because this both rooms could survive. And like I say, if the play, but y'all need to grow the player pool, just anyways, because they're like it's like me and you say like the 1-3 is kind of intimidating for new players. It's hard to come up with $300 of your money when you feel like you're just gonna blow it and all of that. You kind of need the cheaper games. Like you need the Paramounts in Houston to filter in to the 52 socials. So you kind of need that in College Station, especially in a college town where it's a lot of college kids.
Right, but especially in those rooms where it's like one room, I guess they are literally taking players from each other. But if they both do good, it's going to help each other out, right? Because if one room is growing the player pool and the other, then those players are going to go to the other room as well. I mean, there'll be different promotions, I'm sure, for each room to where people will go to both. And each room is going to do better because the player pool in general is bigger.
Yeah, well, and like even like a player like me, I was coming to Houston a lot to get the variety. Now I kind of stay towards there. Not great for the podcast because I would like to show a little bit more variety, but crap, I need to support kind of my hometown to keep this thing growing. So it's but yeah, getting this player pool a little bit more and more. But he also came to me. He's like, "What? You're one of the regs here. Like, what can I do to make this poker room better?" And it got me thinking, and I was like, "Ooh, man!" And I told him like, open more often, more days, earlier hours. But when you go to a poker room, what is it that blows you away? What do you really look for?
I don't know about blows me away, but some of the things that I'm looking for whenever I go, I guess would be like a time bulk. That to me is a big deal for someone who goes a lot. I guess I'm not blown away by it, but whenever I'm looking at different rooms, if I can get a deal for my time, because I live so close to all the rooms, to where if I can get a deal to buy a lot of time, I'm going to go back more often. But I guess you said the rake is very similar to the time bulks anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like the bulk time, because at the end of the day, the bulk time, all it is doing is reducing your hourly cost.
Right.
So just having a lower hourly fee in general would be the big thing. But both of these are only $10 an hour, which is kind of the min for prime time regardless. Like assuming that they're both the same and they're both going to keep that. I'm trying to think what would be the big thing.
I kind of like how Paramount has because I don't think the room that you're referring to would have like a kitchen, like a nice kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like if they could go maybe Paramount's route of like maybe they could do like you can bring your own alcohol, or they don't serve alcohol there, do they?
They don't serve alcohol, no.
So maybe you could bring your own alcohol, but they have the sodas, the Gatorades, the Monsters, and then a bunch of snacks that they keep stocked for free.
The snacks and drinks, I mean, they all have, well, like they had a game girl serving it at the new room, which was like everything was on ice. It was kind of nice. They did a real good job with that. I guess having somebody available, there's like this daiquiri barn that's real popular up there to go and grab stuff like that. Like Paramount, because they have that runner who just goes and gets random crap for people.
What do you look for in a room? Because I mean, I look more for the rake structure, and I really like the snacks that they have. I think that's really nice and really welcoming to new players when you tell them that, hey, you can come play, and get free drinks and all the Gatorade you can drink or whatever. Or, well, I guess they probably wouldn't do many small tournaments. I like that personally, but what kind of things do you look for?
I guess like having that person to get the alcohol, and we talked about this, and it can be really annoying. But in Houston, I'll almost stop playing at places that didn't have any alcohol servings because the games are just way better. I mean, it just loosens the game up. Can it get too much and be annoying at times? Yes. But in general, I think it's probably a good thing for the game. It's anyone that doesn't have that, it seems like it's just a much tighter room. So that would be probably number one for me, maybe.
That's funny from someone who doesn't really drink when they play.
Oh, yeah.
Your number one is serving alcohol.
I mean, 100%. I don't drink when I play hardly ever. Sometimes, but very, very rarely. Okay, this is not for me, but I think in general, this is what people look for a lot. The game girls.
It definitely. So the alcohol and the game rules definitely drive the recreational player to go. I think when they're deciding where to play, I think if you have the option, I think that definitely plays a factor.
I think 100%. Because, okay, when poker first came here, it was Mint and Post Oak was the big ones. Prime became the big place to play in Houston. I mean, they didn't advertise it, but I mean, they had a bunch of models walking around, basically. And that's, I mean, I don't know if that's the whole reason, but it's a big reason they took over the kind of the poker scene. 52 Social was the next big one, and I don't think it was any better than Prime but it was cheaper rake with, the game girls being like amazing over there too. So is it something I look for? No, not really, but I do look for it because I think it makes the game better in general.
I think it makes the game better for, like I said, those players who aren't really playing that regularly and are just looking to go have a good time, which is really what you want to make the game better. So
yeah, because I mean they both factor in alcohol and pretty girls. I mean, neither one leans itself to like grinder. It leans itself to somebody who's looking, yeah, just like you said, to have a good time. I don't know, like I can't give him this suggestion, but like I really like a nice area because, like I say, I played in the underground rooms where it wasn't really nice. So, like if I was in Houston, it doesn't get as much action as you would think. But, like, I like walking in and being, like, champions, where it's, like, really, really nice on the inside.
Oh, I mean, yeah, that's hard to do for a lot of places, but it is really nice when it happens.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't work out well for this place, because that's a lot of money. I guess location. We don't think about it much, because Houston kind of has the same locations. But I was telling them, like, there's BCS poker's like in the back of kind of like a warehouse type. I'm like, this location will hold y'all back. New players do not want to come to the back of a warehouse with a lot of money.
Well, especially if you don't know anybody in the game and you're going by yourself at night.
Yeah, it's just too intimidating. Like the other one is like in a strip center by Planet Fitness. Way less intimidating. So I guess location, even though I don't think about it much, that's kind of a big one too. You need to have something where if it's going to be in a location that's kind of not that great, like I would say like maybe 52 Social is not in a location where you're like, oh yeah, I'll walk down the street at 1 a.m. I feel good here. Then you definitely need like security around to make people feel comfortable.
Right, which 52 does a great job of doing. I've always felt pretty good. They even seem to kind of have up security.
That's a big thing, cause like just last night somebody was asking me, he knew I play around there, and he liked the idea of going to 52 Social, but he was a little nervous about the area, and he was asking me, and I was like, I think in general you should always be aware of your surroundings, but I mean, we've gone a ton of times, and we've never had even the slightest of an issue, and I think that's due to they have really good security there.
100% due to that. 24/7. So
it's like I don't even know what just having it there as a deterrent is really nice.
Here's something that I was going to bring up before we started talking about that new room. Something that kind of plays a factor for me sometimes. Once I have, so whenever you're tracking your sessions and your bankroll, when I hit that new bankroll high, I get real hesitant because I'm always like, oh, I don't want to go down. Does that ever, I know it doesn't really affect you that much, does it?
It doesn't affect me as long as I don't go down enough to where I feel my bankroll's endangered. But I mean, it's never going to stay at the high. I mean, very unlikely. If your high is right now, the chances of it never dipping down any lower, because I mean, okay, if you play and win this next session, that's a new high. I mean, it's going to... I mean, I hate to break it to you, you're going to have a losing session at least one other time in your poker career.
I mean, it gives me anxiety. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go play yesterday. Is because I didn't want to have a losing session.
No, I was on the opposite end. I like on the win streak. I was like, "Oh God, let me win, because I was like, "Ooh, I want to break 10. I want to break 10," and then I couldn't. So I kind of wanted that, but I wouldn't say that gave me anxiety. It was just something like I was like, "Man, let's keep it going." So, but I don't think so. Like once my bankroll gets like a little on the "Oh God, what's gonna happen here" side, I'm a little nervous. But as long as I have bankroll to support, our poker, hitting the high doesn't really do much. I think what affects me more is seeing my hourly drop versus what it is. I mean, that's kind of my goal. That's how I kind of gauge my success.
Right. No, I definitely agree with that. I always am mainly judging it off the hourly, but when I hit that new bankroll high, that does affect me on that next session. I'm like, ugh.
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world when you get like the new high.
Oh, it affects me the other way. I'm like, oh, I don't want to take a big hit here after just hitting a new high. Like I just hit that new goal. Is how I always think about it. Because I mean, I went and hit that new bankroll high, and I was like, I don't really want to go play. I should go play 1-2 instead. And then I was like,
if anything, it seems like you'd go the other way and start playing the bigger games, which I've been encouraging you. I'm glad to see you went and did 5-5 because I think you're well within the range. Maybe not to every session 5-5, but I mean, I think at least 1 out of 4 or 5 you should be playing 5-5.
Right. No, I mean, that's exactly what happened. But I mean, I had the 1-2 game punched in on my GPS before I went to. I mean, the only reason why I didn't go is because they didn't answer the phone when I called to get on the list.
Tyler's like, I'm on a bankroll high. Oh, what you gonna go do, Tyler? Tyler's like, I'm looking for a $20 sit and go.
I'm trying to bump it down. I don't want anything to get out of control.
So, okay, well, that I would say you are different than most other players in that respect.
So, kind of talking about like that, it kind of reminds me of like, I know in chess they have like an ELO system, and I know in different video games they have an ELO system, and they had something in one of the video games that they would talk about where they called it like ranked anxiety, because once you hit that rank, people would not want to play anymore because they wouldn't want to lose it.
I can see that, yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like, because they ended up switching to a different system, so you wouldn't have that set number to give you the anxiety, to where like they would hide that number from the player, because it gives people anxiety. Once you hit that high, you don't want it to go down and people will stop playing. So I think it's more common than you think, people getting anxiety hitting that new high. Because to me, the bankroll almost feels like ELO. If you don't know what ELO is, it's kind of like a ranking system.
Well, I know, because I play Overwatch,
well,
so
no,
it's
no.
kind of like SR there. Like, I mean, it's just like if you win, it gets you like a higher score, lower is lower, but you kind of, and then it kind of you kind of get different medals as it goes up, right?
Definitely. No, I know you knew what ELO was. I mean, if anyone's listening doesn't play video games like us, they might not know what ELO is, or in chess.
They're
but
like, what the fuck is this nerd talk that just happened?
Exactly. And Clint's like, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's like, quit explaining it to me, please. He's like, you're talking to me like I'm an idiot.
Yeah, it's yeah. They're like, I came here for a poker podcast, not just listen to two nerds talk about their ELO and SR.
Yeah, but it's basically a ranking system, and it gives people anxiety. That's kind of what the same kind of effect.
I can see that. Okay, now that you explain it that way, that kind of makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, I can kind of. Well, like I say, like the hourly, I think has that effect on me too. Well, because like I read like on like video games. You remember Halo back in the day?
Halo 2, yes.
Okay, they had like a system where it like leveled you up, and if you won, you lost. If you won, you'd go up. If you lost, and what they then like later Halos they took it away, which I hated. I wanted to know how I was doing, but they found it. If you were really good, you loved it, but if you were really bad, you didn't want to be reminded about how bad you were. So, yeah, I can... And the same thing kind of with poker. I mean, this is the same reason, like, the vast majority of poker players will never track the results.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean... So, yeah, it's the same thing as the ELO or whatever. I mean, if you're losing, I mean, you want to go have a good time. You don't want to lose your hobby, but you don't want to be reminded about, like, oh, God, I'm not that great at this.
Right, and I should probably get a new hobby because this hourly is a disaster.
And if you're a bad player, please don't track. We need you.
Right.
We had a whole podcast about how valuable you are. So it's a no. That's a good way to look at it on that. So okay, well, hopefully that you didn't explain it so well that I end up with the same anxiety next time I hit a bankroll high. It never affected me, and now I'm like, oh God, what happens if I lose? My high's gonna be gone.
Did you already go over one of your hands this week, or did you have one for us? You might have touched on it.
I touched on it. I mean, I can explain it in. I had one last night that was kind of interesting. So it's a straddle to 6. I'm in, I think, like the hijack position. One person makes it 26. It's a call. I have pocket 10s. I think a lot of people 3-bet here. I don't like doing that with this hand. If I 3-bet and I'm called, then I don't love it. And it's, if I am against a bigger hand, if I'm kind of set mining, kind of playing an overpair, I mean, I kind of like playing this just as a flat call. So 26, a call, and then I call, and the original straddler folds. So before the flop comes out, the original raiser says I'm all in blind. And he has, there's probably about 90 in the pot, and he's all in for like 100. So it's a pretty big bet into the pot. But on the other side, he's probably pot stuck in this pot if he's got a decent hand. So the other player folds. It comes king 3-3, which I don't love because I'm thinking of hands he might do this with. Jacks, queens, kings, and aces would definitely be all in that. Ace king would be there. King queen would be there. King jack suited might be there. I mean, maybe even like queen. Yeah, it's so. But I go forever. What would you do in this situation?
I guess when I read it, whenever you text me the situation, I was thinking it was a snap call, but now that I have the full story, because we can only give so much through text when we're both playing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an interesting situation because I mean this screams ace king to me, but at the same point, how was the player type? Was he a tight player or was he kind of aggressive? Or
I think he's kind of aggressive.
I think I just put the call in and hope for the best.
I put the call in thinking that there's a ton of hands that I'm losing to, but I am getting 1-3, and it's not a horrible flop for me. I mean, because if he can do this with ace king, he can do this with ace queen. He can do this with ace jack was what I was thinking. He could do this with 9s or 8s. So getting almost 1-3, I was like, and I mean, it might seem like an easy call. When I called and flipped my cards over, everybody's like, "What are you doing?" I mean, and I was immediately, they're like, "Do you want to earn it twice?" I was like, "It's up to you, man. Anything you want to do." He never exposed his cards, and then at the end, he's just like, "You're good," and so I was like, "Oh God."
You ran it twice?
No, he said once.
Oh,
So
okay.
I mean, I let it be his decision. He said once was fine. I don't know what he had. Maybe 2 overs or maybe a pair under. I mean, I guess would be the 2 things that would ring out. Someone might do this with like a suited connectors too.
Sometimes, man, it seems like, especially at like the games that we play at, some players just are looking for a reason to go home.
I kind of thought that too. I kind of felt like this is a guy who did not want to be like just hanging around with $100. So that was probably factored into it. That, I mean, he's like, well, $100, I'll either take this down or, go home. I mean, because we've been guilty of it too, of being a lot looser when we have stacks like that.
Oh, 100%. But I mean, I'm a lot looser, but I think some players just look to bust to go home. Like,
Yeah.
I oftentimes, I mean, I'll get looser because I'll try to make some squeeze plays or something. whenever I'm shorter stacked. But I played at, I played at a few rooms where I had one guy literally tell me he never leaves with money. Yeah, and I mean, we played a PLO hand, and he's like, "You're good," and turned his hand over. And it's like, "I have 2 pair." Turns out he had a straight as well. But, I mean, yeah, I flopped a set. But I was like, like I said, this sums up PLO perfectly.
That seems about right.
The dealer's like, he actually won. I'm like, I know, I saw, but it's fine. Yeah. I mean, but he was like, yeah, I never leave with money. And he played for a long time, and he actually ran up a pretty good stack for what he bought in for. And then eventually just started calling 3 bets and 4 bets with like ace 3 offsuit and jack 5. And it was just like, well, not for me to go. And it's like, man, wish you would have told me that that's what you were going to do. Because he played tight the entire time, ran up a stack, and then just gave it away at the end and went home. So it seems like a lot of players sometimes will just, if you're just playing for fun, it seems like a lot of times they'll just give it away at the end just to give a reason to go home.
I feel like that's very true, and I feel like that's very much what one of the big things that makes poker profitable. Ooh, I just remembered. I have a really good hand from last night.
Go for it.
Okay, so it's a double board bomb pot.
Okay.
$10 in. I have King 8 suited, King 8 of hearts. So the board on the top board runs out 10, 10, 6, 2 hearts. The bottom board runs out King 9, 6. And I'm like, I got top pair on one board and a flush draw on the other. This is not a time I usually bet here, because to me, you kind of need to be nutted on these hands. But I'm like, this is pretty good. It's hard for me to be completely dominated anywhere. And I'm like, I wonder if one bet can take it down. So I bet 45, thinking maybe I can put pressure on somebody to fold. Everybody folds except for one. He jams for $250. Like, oh God, this is hurtful. So I'm like thinking, oh God. So he's like, just let me take it, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm like, so if I'm up against King Queen, I got 36% just to win half. So I am not in a good spot. But if he's playing a trip 10s or something like that, then I mean, I have the board. I mean, I have one board with these chance to scoop the other board.
Right.
What do you do here?
I'm probably the last person you want to take your double board bomb pot advice from. I mean, I've had my 2 biggest winning sessions. You know how many double board bomb pots I played?
0?
Exactly 0. I played exactly 0. I told him I'm gonna sit out every single one. I don't care. I'm just not even getting involved. I'll just walk around or do literally anything else than play the double board bomb pot. I mean, I just have no interest right now.
Okay, so
but I would call.
So I tank forever and a day. I mean, it's a gigantic race into this, and I'm like, well, would he raise this big with something like King Queen? I mean, it doesn't seem like that it would be. It seems like this is a 10, in which on there. So eventually, I go ahead and make the call. I completely whiff the flush up top. Do not improve on the bottom. But luckily for me, he shows 6-10 for a flop boat on the top and pair of 6s on bottom. So my pair of kings takes half the bomb pot. I was like, ooh, God. So I'm like, you flopped a boat? He's like, yeah. I'm like, ooh, God, my draw was not even live up at the top. So I don't know if that was more luck or skill, but either way, I was taking half the pot.
Right. So it's never great when you get the money in drawing stone dead. But on that note, this concludes episode 6. This was the Texas Poker Podcast. We will talk to you next week.
That was the Texas Poker Podcast. Go ahead and rack up, add time, and we'll see you next week.